Chapter 7, The Secret War with Vedic Rus, continued. A change of priestly tactics. During the 1,000-Year War, the priest changed his tactics a number of times, but all to no avail. Rus still laughed, as before, at his occult intrusions. The people referred to those preachers as miserable wretches. At that time, wretchedness was not equated with physical affliction, but with occultism. People in Rus took pity on the wretched preachers. They fed them and offered them shelter, but they did not take any of their sermons seriously. After 400 centuries, the priest realized he would never achieve victory over the Vedic land. He accurately determined wherein the extraordinary power of Vedism lay. Vedism was based solidly on a divine culture. Everyone's way of life was divine, and every family created in its domain a space of love. They felt the wholeness of nature and consequently everything God had created. What happened in Vedism was that people spoke with God through nature. Instead of bowing down before him, they attempted to understand him. They loved God as son and daughter love their kindly parents. And so the priest came up with a plan which would be able to break this dialogue with the divine. To this end, it was necessary to separate people from their domains, from the divine gardens, from their co-creation together with God. It was necessary to divide the whole territory where the Vedic people lived into different states and to destroy their culture. New preachers went to Rus. They put a new approach into practice. This time they sought out people in whom selfishness, pride, dominated even just a little over the energies of feelings. Whenever they found such a man, they tried enhancing this sense of pride within him. This is how they operated. Imagine a group of stately-looking elders arriving at the home of a happy family. There is no attempt as before to preach or teach them how to live. On the contrary, they all at once bow down before the head of the household, present him with outlandish gifts, and say, "In our far-off land, we climbed to the top of a high mountain, the highest mountain on the earth. Standing at the summit above the clouds, we heard a voice from heaven telling us about you. It was told to us that you are the wisest of all the people upon the earth. You alone were chosen, and we are honored to bow down before you, present you with our gifts, and wait upon your words of wisdom." And if they saw the man taking their bait, they would continue their sly talk. "It is your duty to make all the other people happy. The voice told us so on the mountaintop. You should not waste your valuable time on other concerns. You should be in charge of people and making decisions for them, decisions that have been entrusted to you alone. Here is your heavenly headdress." At this point, a headdress decorated with precious stones was presented to the man as though it were the grandest treasure. And so the headdress was placed upon the head of the man who now believed in his own majesty and his own chosen status. And at that very moment, all the visitors fell to their knees before him in great reverence. And they began to praise heaven for the honor of being worthy to bow before this majesty. Now the foreign visitors built him a separate house to live in that looked very much like a temple. This is how the first princes rose to power in Vedic Rus. The new prince's neighbors looked upon this man sitting on his throne in the temple as some sort of curiosity. They watched as the foreign visitors bowed before him, indulged his every whim, and plied him with all sorts of questions. At first, they took this scenario for some kind of game from overseas, and some decided, either out of curiosity or out of compassion, to play along with the foreigners and with their neighbor. And people gradually got drawn into the game. And little by little, they sank into a state of serfdom. And without realizing it, their thoughts turned more and more away from co-creation. It was not easy for the priests' emissaries to get the princedoms established. In the beginning, for more than 100 years, their attempts proved unsuccessful. But still, it finally came about, and Vedic Rus was carved out into princedoms. And then events took their natural course. The princes began fighting over who was greater, and dragged their neighbors into the internecine feuds. Later historians would claim that grand princes arose who managed to join the isolated princedoms of Rus together in one mighty state. But think for yourself, Vladimir. Could that really have been so? And what kind of unification exactly do the historians have in mind? It is all very simple, in fact. Yes, one prince was able to kill or conquer others, but people can be united only by culture and a way of life. The setting up of borders always indicates separation. Once a state was established, not on the basis of a cultured way of life, but on the artificial greatness of one or more people by virtue of their armies, a whole lot of problems immediately made themselves heard. How to maintain those borders and expand them as the opportunity occurred, and so arose the need for a sizable army. A large state cannot be governed by one man alone, so the clerks and scribes soon appeared, and they have been multiplying each day right up to the present time. The princes, clerks, scribes, merchants, and all of their servants together form a category of people who have been separated from God's creations. Today, their functional designation is the creation of an artificial world. They have utterly lost the ability to perceive true reality, and so constitute fertile soil for occultism. Only 1,000 years ago, Rus was considered pagan. Paganism still carried within itself a lingering sense of the divine Vedic culture. With the advent of the princes and their princedoms, first little princedoms, later larger ones, the rulers found they needed a force more powerful than an army, a force capable of creating a type of man inclined to unquestioning submission to authority. Here, too, the priests' messengers came to the ruling prince's assistance and offered them a suitable religion. The essence of this new development was very much to the prince's liking, though there was hardly anything new in it and contained everything that Egypt had 5,000 years earlier. Like the pharaoh, the prince was considered to be appointed to his position by God. The occult ministers of the new religion were his advisors, again, just as in Egypt. Everyone else was a mere slave. It was not a simple task to inculcate the new order into the minds of free people whose memories could still savor the celebrations of Vedic culture. And so once again, the priest came to the prince's aid. His foot soldiers began spreading false rumors to the effect that there were pagan settlements where people were being more and more frequently sacrificed to God. It was noised abroad that pagans sacrificed to their gods not just various animals, but also beautiful girls, or young men, or even little children. This false rumor is still rampant among us today. More and more of it became a source of anger to the pagan people. And now here was this new religion being offered, which placed a strict prohibition on burnt sacrifices. It talked about equality and brotherhood, exempting, of course, the princes. Thus, this new religion was, little by little, introduced into pagan Rus. Eventually, one of the ruling princes decreed that Christianity be recognized as the only true religion in the land. Rus came to be called Christian, and all other religions were banned. Now let anybody whose forebears, mothers and fathers, were called pagan just 1,000 years ago ask themselves this question: did pagans really sacrifice either animals or people to their gods? And the true picture of events will become clear to anyone who is able to do at least and the true picture of events will become clear to anyone who is able to do at least 9 minutes of logical reasoning. And you, Vladimir, once you have applied your own logic to the discovery of the truth, you may see the facts for yourself. I shall be glad to give you a little help. First, ask yourself a logical question. If pagans, as their accusers claim, actually offered up someone as a sacrifice to God, then why did the mere rumor about such offerings so greatly trouble their mind and feelings? It would have been more logical, in that case, to welcome such claims and enthusiastically try to repeat them instead of greeting them with outrage and accepting the new religion's entreaties. But the people were outraged. Why? Naturally, because the pagans could not entertain even the thought of sacrificing animals, let alone people. That is why no one can come up with even a single source in support of burnt sacrifices among the people of pagan Rus. It was only the chroniclers of Christianity that claimed that. But then they never lived in pagan Rus and did not even know the language of pagan Rus. And what about the sources and manuscripts of pagan Rus itself? Some of them were hidden, some were burnt in bonfires, just as in Rome. What exactly was seditious in these scrolls? What did they disclose? Without being able to read them, everybody today can make their own guess. They would have exposed the falsity of the accusations against paganism, and they could have transmitted the knowledge of Vedism. There was more to it than the fact that none of the people of pagan Rus ever indulged in burnt sacrifices. They did not eat meat at all. They could not even imagine such a thing. They were friends with the animals. Their daily diet was varied enough, but it was strictly vegetarian. Who can come up with a single recipe from ancient Russian cuisine that even mentioned meat? Nobody. Even our epic folk tales tell about how the turnip was respected in ancient Rus, about how the people drank mead beer. Let anyone today, even meat eaters, try drinking this warm mead from a flower pollen and herbs. After drinking that, you will not want to eat anything else, certainly not meat. Those who force themselves to do so may find the meat will only make them vomit. Besides, judge for yourself, Vladimir. Why should anyone eat meat when all around them was a whole lot of easily digestible, high-energy food available? During the winter, bees fed on nothing but honey and pollen, and so can go the whole winter without excreting at all. The whole intake was assimilated by the bee's body, and spitten, a drink made with boiled honey, was always served to guests directly they entered the home. And who would start eating meat after tasting a sweet drink? It was the nomads that introduced meat to the world. There was hardly any edible fruit to fend for in the prairie lands and the deserts they moved about in, and this was why they ended up killing cattle. The nomads ate the meat of those animal herds that served as their beasts of burden, animals that carried their belongings, fed them with milk, and gave them wool for clothing. Thus the culture of our forebears was destroyed, and Rus was plunging into religion. If the people had learnt genuine religion, purely Christian, it is possible that life would have turned out differently. But the priest managed to inject his own twists into the Christian teachings, and the one religion became subject to various interpretations, and the Christian world became divided into a multitude of denominations, often in conflict with each other. The high priest spent a great deal of effort on Rus. In other places on the earth, people saw what he was doing and did not permit his preachings within their borders. Japan, China, and India did not become Christian, but the high priest won them over by another way. The age of occultism began 1,000 years ago. People all over the earth lived in the age of occultism and are still living in it today.